Hello, my dear friends, and welcome back to an episode of the Rocky Road Podcast. Today we have a guest who we could probably talk to for 3 years straight and still not talk enough, but we have to focus ourselves just a little bit, and I would like our guest to introduce herself. So welcome. Who are ya?
Well, hi, I'm Cori. I'm your mom.
What?
Wow, what a way to start this.
I'm one of them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. What else would you like to know? In which direction should we go?
So you were born in... Fun fact, actually, speaking of born, we always talk about fun facts. Cori's birthday is the day after mine.
The day after Kristin's.
Wow.
Super cool.
And it was Thanksgiving, right? Mm-hmm. Your birthday was on Thanksgiving. The year Kristin was born. Or vice, like your, no?
No, it was a
Yeah.
Saturday?
I'm trying to think. You were born on a Saturday. My birthday was Sunday.
Okay.
Clearly remember every detail of my birth.
Right. I mean, you were there. How could you forget?
It was kind of a difficult time.
A little bit. But, yeah.
Yes.
So we're in the midst of wedding planning. Cori graciously gave up an entire day to drive over here from her home to wedding plan with Cody and myself, and that kind of brings about some of the topics that we're talking about today. Just because we had to focus in just a little bit. So we're talking a little bit about families and family dynamics, and I bet you have seen the most wild combinations of families with your experience over 2 decades of wedding planning and coordinating. What's the most bizarre family dynamic you've seen?
So every family dynamic is different, and every family dynamic is bizarre in its own way. Seeing, the blended families are always exciting. Not good, not bad. There's no, the rule of good or bad doesn't really apply to either one of those, but it's sort of almost volatile. So if you have remarried couples or bringing children together that are all of a sudden going to be siblings, there was a dad who brought his very young, very new girlfriend to the wedding, and she wanted to sit in the front row. So there's all of these. A lot of it, it's less about the family dynamic I've seen, and more about how people behave. And it's not just about following etiquette rules. It's about following just kind of basic rules for human decency and respecting people and respecting the fact that this is a wedding.
And weddings are it's such a high emotion day.
It is.
And it's like, it's all about that day. And then there's a whole marriage that follows it that people often don't even think about. But it's...
Right. You put all of your energy into planning this party.
Right.
And then you see couples and their families. And, I actually had a mother one time tell me that it was about a month or 2 after the wedding, and it was beautiful, it was elaborate, it was expensive, it was perfect. But this woman and her daughter battled every single time they had a conversation about the wedding, and a month or 2 later, she said that she and her daughter still had not recovered. Their relationship had not recovered from wedding planning, which is really sad.
It's just one day of your life. I mean, it's a big day, but it's just one day.
And it's a great day, and it's a celebration,
Yeah.
and it's bringing families together. It's bringing the people that you love most of all together. And then we get all caught up in etiquette and what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? How do I do
expectations?
this? And, we've created this, I talk about this a lot, we've created this wedding monster that the expectation of the wedding is bigger and better and more unique and more interesting. And I think that sometimes families and couples need to be reminded that, by the way, the day after the wedding, you have to wake up next to each other and live the rest of your lives.
Right.
And it seems really simple when we're sitting here in this setting, but it's wow. It's really something to watch sometimes. And so as a wedding planner, I had to be the mediator. And I could say things that maybe I'm just mimicking what the bride's mother has said to her, but she's going to listen to me because I'm a stranger and she's paying me.
Absolutely.
Which is just kind of how, it's how the world works. A little kid will listen to their favorite aunt and they won't listen to their mother.
Oh, for sure.
Absolutely.
It's just a typical. But I've never seen a family dynamic like ours.
Not at all.
I'm pretty excited to write about it, and I love talking to people about it. It's I'm not really. It's funny because we get to there. I imagine somebody has written about it. I'm sure that somewhere out there is an etiquette book about how to handle this particular kind of mixed family. But I'm going to write one that's better.
There you go. I'll read it.
Because I think it's really interesting, and it's colorful. It's exciting. Wendy and I get along so well.
Colorful is such a great word.
Yeah.
That's cool.
It's not, there's nothing bad about it. There's nothing negative about it. It's all beautiful. And the families get along really well. And my favorite thing to tell people is that there will be 4 mothers at this wedding. That is my favorite, besides the fact that you and Cody are getting married. The fact that there are going to be 4 mothers, every single, specifically weddings professionals, they all say, oh.
Wow. It's wild. And it's interesting that you say that that's just our side, like the colorful side, that's just this side. And then we have my fiance's side of the family that also has a whole dynamic. And so bashing all of those people's and personalities and planning styles and preferences and everything together has just been really, really fascinating, because there are some people on either sides of the family that I'm like, oh, you're going to jive. And then there are other people on other sides of the family that they're going to be on opposite corners, not because they are going to dislike each other, but they're just going to be totally different humans. But now we're all going to be family. Big old family.
Yeah.
I'm here for it.
Family.
And I get to come watch.
Well, yeah, and you talk about personalities and planning styles and all of that, but it's also, I mean, culturally, it's different. I know that many people feel the way your mom does about, and this is, again, one of my favorite things, is the dollar dance. Get people talking about the dollar dance at a wedding, okay? There is the camp of, that is the tackiest thing in the world. Why would you do that? And then there's Western Pennsylvania Italian. I say, what do you mean you're not going to do a dollar dance? It's not about the money. It's about the time with the bride.
Right.
It means that because we've done away with receiving lines at weddings. Because it takes too long. It's absurd. It's
right.
But then people have traveled. They're coming to celebrate this day with you, and they just want to have a minute. But yeah, asking people for $1 for a dance is tacky. But it's just funny. But culturally, again, you look at when I look at the weddings that I've done over the last gazillion years. You have Pittsburgh, you have Philly, you have New York, you have New Jersey. Like, everybody has these different ideas of how regionally they celebrate a marriage. And bringing them all together is pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
So what parts, I know a little bit of this, but what parts of your or our kind of family culture are you going to see on our way? Like, what do you see in the planning process so far that anything surprised you? That's like, that's a little bit of our family that wasn't really expected. And there's other stuff that you don't know about yet, too, that might kind of bring some of that in, But
I think that going into this process and not knowing, I am very comfortable with my role in your life. I know where I belong, and I'm happy with it, and I know that if I ever think that I belong somewhere else, I can just ask. And I think that we have the best possible story.
For sure.
But I wasn't sure what my role would be as the wedding planner, because for such a long time, up until, yesterday, I identified, that was one of my identifiers, that I was a wedding planner.
And you retired yesterday?
I retired yesterday, that is correct. After hundreds of weddings. And I wasn't sure how to be not just the mother of the bride, but the birth mother of the bride with the adoptive mother of the bride, like the real mom, and just trying to figure out where I fit there. And I also am very sensitive to, I don't want to make other people uncomfortable, which is a flaw. It's definitely a personality flaw.
Oh, wow. Let's run in the family.
She's my mom.
Yes. My gosh.
Sorry, babe.
Wow.
But I wanted to, I don't want to force conversations. And quite honestly, it is not the venue. It's not about this venue, but it's not a venue manager or a DJ's or anybody's business how you came to this earth. It just really isn't. And so to talk about our relationship and to talk about my title as birth mom is really inviting a whole other conversation. And it's actually an inappropriate conversation to have if it weren't this, nobody would ever look at you and say, tell me about when your son was conceived, or
Right.
Just like nobody who talks about that to strangers. And so and to it opens up conversations that I don't want to have with people that don't mean anything to me. I love all the wedding vendors. I can't wait to work with them. Anyway.
Have you ever planned a wedding for someone else that had an adoptive situation like this?
No, not like ours.
Okay.
Not that both moms were there. But so the day that we went and looked at the wedding venue, and I had been telling Chris, let's just tell people, we don't have to confuse it, just tell people I'm the wedding planner. I'm a close friend, or I'm close to the family, I'm the wedding planner. We walked into the venue and her mom just introduced me. I'm her adopted mom and this is her birth mom. And we're all working together and it's going to be great. And it was this, and I love her so much for just blurting it out because I didn't know how to do it.
Yeah.
And
that brings up a really interesting point too, though, because I'll share parts of, like, I have a tattoo on my foot that's in Cori's handwriting, and there's certain things about my life that come up in conversation. I was like, oh yeah, and my mom, well, like my birth mom, and then because people who met Wendy and not her, and I'll say things in such a casual way, and I have had so many people who are like, oh my gosh, wait, what? And they what? But it's just my life, so it's not dramatic. It doesn't make me misty on a daily basis. Yes, I did just get a little misty thinking about how both of you are going to be on my wedding day, but that's a whole nother issue. I will blow my nose later. But I'll talk about it in such a casual, open way. Like, oh yeah, I met her when I was 21, and we went to this, and and people are just, they have so many questions. But I've already moved on to what the actual question was, and it's just really interesting that I forget that ours is a very unlikely story, because I talked about a family friend, I think in a couple episodes ago, who she waited until her adopted parents passed away to locate anyone in her birth family so she didn't upset them. And at that point, a lot of it was too late, and she was able to locate at least some people. But just to think about the openness and the fact that everything really went as positively as it possibly could, it's just interesting to remember that this isn't everyone else's awareness of our situation.
And this is a very rare scenario for a lot of people to have this type of story play out. I've met a lot of adopted people in my life, for sure, more than I think is normal. But I've always wanted to adopt. Even when I was little, I was always like, oh, I'm going to adopt somebody one day. Maybe. I don't know if that's going to happen. But it's just everybody I've met has different opinions. I've met people that were adopted and they're like, I want nothing to do with my birth family. They just never even looked for them, don't want to find them. It's just not in their thing. And then there's other people that are curious about it. And it's just so interesting how the same scenario, in quotes, is so different and received so differently. So even when I first met you and you said you were adopted and your birth mom and everything, I was like, wow, that's so awesome. And I don't look at it as a tell me how she was conceived kind of thing. I look at it like, wow, this is so cool that you get to see somebody who's like blood related to you, and then you meet them. And she's, Kristin told me this, like, when you meet her, you're going to see me, because it's like you meet, I have never met Wendy. So I don't know her. So you're the first mom of hers that I meet. And so I'm like, well, duh, this makes sense, obviously. So, but it'll be interesting too at her wedding to just see both of you there, and both had, she's here because of both of you, and that's why. And that's beautiful, and that's something to celebrate. So that's a good thing.
And that's something that was very apparent very early on, was the respect that you and Wendy had for each other, or still have for each other, was just the little gestures and the little comments that both of you would make, which, thank you so much for letting me be here. It's like, no, we wouldn't be here without you. And it's just this mutual understanding that it's such a team effort.
And it's real. It's real. I think that we are more than polite. I think that we treat each other like family. And we don't necessarily know each other very well. but we have something very significant in common. And so, yeah, I mean, I can't wait. I think the wedding weekend is going to be out of this world.
It will be surreal,
Uh-huh.
for sure.
Well, and it's funny that the conversations that I have with my mom, and I give her a hard time, and it's not very nice of me, but that's, we'll talk about that some other time. But I tease her a little bit because she says, well, what should I wear? And I say, Mom, Emily Post doesn't have this. Emily Post doesn't have the list of what the mother of the birth mother should wear to the wedding. Like, there's just not there is no checklist. There's not a list in Vogue. There's not a, it's just,
Right.
wear what you want, do what you want. And
Within reason.
within reason.
Wear clothes.
You
Within
did not
reason.
just give a green light to wear whatever you want, because I know if someone
No.
shows up in khakis and a blue blazer,
That is correct. And if somebody shows up in white, nobody's allowed to come in white.
Oh, I got to return my dress.
Stop!
Just kidding. I'm just kidding. That's the worst.
well, that goes back to just thinking about the story of the dad who brought his very young new girlfriend, the awareness of it, where there are people who go to weddings and show up in a white ball gown, and I say that was a very conscious choice, and
Right.
saying I
Because
didn't
you have to
know.
look for a white dress.
Yes.
You have
Yes.
to really shop for it.
Yeah.
I don't care how tan you are or how good you think you look in white. This is not your day. And just being able to say there's a certain awareness factor to it where you can make a conscious choice, and either they're completely unaware of the effects of their actions on others, or they're very aware and they just want to try to get away with pissing someone off.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's I think that a lot of people will use a family event, not just a wedding, but any kind of a family event, a holiday, whatever it happens to be, to see how far they can push limits. Or, in some, when there are some divorced families, that they're just trying to stick it to whoever it happens to be. And I think that that's incredibly disrespectful. And I think it's cruel, because not only is it cruel to the person that you're trying to stick it to, but you've now involved everybody else around you in this drama. And the wedding day is not the day for that. And it
Agreed.
to that end, it shows this, to what you just said, that the lack of awareness on both the man and the girlfriend. One of them probably should have known
Yes.
to stop.
When I know, for me, so I was married and divorced, and so my wedding day I still remember as one of the best days of my life because everybody was together. But my mother and father-in-law were divorced, and they could not have been kinder to each other. And I mean, they are friends in general, but it was something I didn't even have to worry about that day.
That's
There was
good.
going to be no tension, no aggression or anything with each other. All family pictures, they were included with their arms around each other. They were this is not about us. And on a regular day, they're friends and they're very kind to each other. So that's a good thing. But I can't even imagine doing wedding planning with divorced spiteful people.
Yeah.
That sounds just terrible, but I'm sure you've experienced a lot of that too. And even just the dynamics of the bride to the mom, and now this bride to two moms, 4 moms, I guess. Yeah, it's really interesting.
It adds a layer.
So many layers.
It's okay. I got you.
Oh yeah. I know. It's all good. It's all good. It's funny though, because each individual has such a different role and has, at least for the most part, made their expectation as far as their involvement clear, and everyone's just it suits their personality. What they want to do suits who they are, and it just kind of makes sense. And so it's another example of how I've been really fortunate in this whole scheme of things.
When you talk about roles, people ask me if I am planning your wedding. And it is important to me, or it was important to me, and now we're here, we're good, everything's great, but it was important to me to be able to draw that distinction. If I was going to be invited to this wedding, which obviously I was going to be, I will work as much as you need me to up until that day. It's important to me that I was not working on the day of your wedding. And I think
Which I think is very, I love that you did that for yourself, and I didn't have to say no.
It's
Take the headset off.
It's an important distinction, though, because people don't realize what. First of all, people don't realize how much time goes into the planning up until the day of. Nobody does. You think you know, but you don't actually know. And then, for me to be wrangling vendors in a different way than the bride, than somebody else. But just because all of the pieces are in place doesn't mean that the event day isn't stressful for the people who are working. And I couldn't wear both hats. I was either going to be a guest or I was going to be the wedding planner. And so I'm bringing somebody with me to be me, so that I don't have to worry about it. And it's, I don't want someone to come to me on her wedding day and tell me that something's wrong. I want them to go to the wedding planner. We'll see if that works. We'll see if I can shut it off.
Just get you a visor that says "Go the F away."
It'll be all over my face.
I asked her today if she thought my ceremony was going to be on time when we were talking about wedding planning timeline, and I swear if I didn't, I almost pee my pants a little bit because she's just dagger. She goes, okay, you're right.
My wedding ceremonies start on time.
Always. Okay,
Good.
Yes, ma'am.
You will be walking down the aisle on time.
Good.
Hopefully Cody will be there.
We'll see.
We'll wrangle him up.
Yep.
So, stop me if this is too much too, but 20 years ago, did you think you would ever be able to go to her wedding?
No.
So,
not
what's
ever.
that like? Well,
it's overwhelming.
yeah.
It's absolutely overwhelming. And if I stop to think about it too much, then I kind of dissolve.
Right.
And so we put it away sometimes. And
Compartmentalize.
yeah, right. I've tried to write about it and I can't. I don't think I can write about it until after the wedding's over. Yeah, there are a lot of things about this that never in a million years.
I mean, I guess, how many years since you've met each other?
11.
Okay, so even 15 years ago, you didn't know if you were going to meet her, right?
Nope.
So now you're going to be at her wedding. I mean, that has to be.
Well, and her sisters will be at her wedding. That's a cool thing.
Yeah.
Her little sisters will be there, and we're all so lucky to have each other. When I talk about specifically in senior living and where I work now, but in other places, when I have these superficial conversations with people and they ask how many kids I have, it varies. It varies when I tell them how many kids I have, because again, I will never deny you. You're all mine. Okay,
Sometimes you don't want to tell the story.
but sometimes it's too much. It's too much. And then sometimes I have learned to jump over the, wow, that's a big gap in their ages. Yep, sure is. And then they want to do the math.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, it's surreal. It's surreal. And yeah, I've had to put it aside a little bit to really process.
Now, none of your other sisters are married. So, right?
My
They're
sisters?
Not. Yeah.
They're much younger.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. So,
At least not that I know of, and it's not legal for
Rosa could be.
Yeah.
okay.
It's true.
So they're not. So this is like your first wedding of one of your daughters, and it's Kristin's wedding of all of them, and it's just like that. I just cannot even wrap my mind around.
I also have to
what
pause
that
for
is.
a second and tell a quick story about when I met my cousins, and Mama decided, or she discovered from having, and how old was she at that? Maybe 12, Arts Fest. And I went out with some cousins, because I'm, early 20s. And she's going from having a middle school student to having a mid-20s. And she's like, oh my gosh, where is she? Is she okay? Is everything going to be all right? Is this how it feels to not know where your child is? And it just went speed demon through all of those developmental, can I borrow the car? All of that skipped to, it's almost midnight and my daughter's not home. What's happening? So just even going through all those dynamics and things. But yeah, it worked out. Obviously, I'm fine. But just skipping all of those considerations, because you can, and you have a daughter too. Imagine skipping 10 years of her life and saying, oh, this is what teenage life is like.
Right.
Wait a minute,
All of a
where's
sudden-
pre-adolescence?
Yeah.
Where's
We wake up tomorrow and she's 15. It's like, what? What just happened? So
Well, and you can't turn off mom.
right.
And I couldn't turn it off. And I can't say that I felt like that in before I had your sisters. I can't say that I felt like that in my 20s, but once it's in there, once it's a part of you, you can't shut it off. And I mother a lot of people, but for you, that was a really tough one. That was because I was so happy that you were with the cousins. But
and you're like, but wait, you're with the cousins in downtown
going
State
where?
College.
it's Arts Fest. Bad things happen during Arts Fest.
It just must be such, I mean, you're a mom of other girls, and your parenting had to be vastly different experiences, obviously, that you met her when she was 21. And so that parenting journey of knowing she was out there, what was that like for you?
So, I was in my early 30s when I had Kristin's sisters.
Did you know her adoptive mom?
No,
Origi-
we had
okay.
met before when I was pregnant.
Okay. So you did know who she was at least. Okay.
We met and we talked, and I can tell you what they were wearing, and I remember the whole conversation. But so I'm trying to think of where to even. Yes, it was different. I was older. I was 14 years older.
Right.
I was a kid when I had Kristin, and I didn't know what to tell them about her because I didn't want to do. I wanted to be honest with them, and I was certain that your parents were honest with you. And I mean, there's nothing to hide. There's nothing to. But it's complicated when you have a little kid. Why would I tell them about a sister that they may never meet?
Right.
Because then that would create something. They would feel that they're missing something. That would create a wanting, a hole that maybe we could never fill.
And two, they're so tactile. Why,
Right.
like they can't imagine somebody.
What do you mean I have a sister?
Yeah, that doesn't make
Right.
sense to little kids. Of course, yeah, that would be very confusing.
And so I think that being an older parent, older in quotation marks, I think that certainly had an impact. But when I got my letter from Kristin, the first letter that she wrote to me, and when we going through that, it was a couple of days. Okay. When I first met Kristin, sitting down with Rosalie, who was 8, and telling her, and Rosalie's very sensitive and she's very sweet, and she has a very soft heart, and I'm very fortunate. I have better kids than I deserve.
Oh,
I really do, all of them. But I told her about it, and she was excited, and she was crying, and she was happy, and she was, when can I meet her? Like, I had all these questions, and all of a sudden she went, okay, wait a minute. And so we had to back up.
right.
And, to have to, again, I've always been very direct with my kids. I've been direct with them about relationships and their bodies and drinking and drugs and like all those things. I want them to, I want to have open conversations with them if they are interested in doing so. But this was I winged that one.
It's not a conversation you read how to have in a book.
No. I mean, right. You can buy a book about how babies are made.
Right.
And
What is puberty?
What is puberty?
Yeah. What does alcohol do to your body? Don't do drugs.
But how do you talk to your kid about this? And it was wonderful. But I also think that, and I'm kind of idealistic about it. Maybe this could be false, but I think that it was important to me that my kids knew that I knew that I was flawed and that I had made choices that perhaps were not what everybody else, I had made different choices.
Right.
I didn't walk the line. I didn't, I was not always the perfect specimen you see before you.
As all of us are flawed. Yes, we are all flawed.
But I think that them knowing, and I'm stumbling over the words because you are not a poor choice. You are a wonderful choice. You're a human being, and you're
an
perfect in your
gift.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's so I don't want to. I want to. you know, I'm stumbling over it.
Yeah.
But it was not conventional.
Mm-hmm.
My choices were not conventional. And so...
You're also, just for your sake, you're also not the first person to put a child up for adoption either.
Right.
So
Correct.
give yourself a little bit of grace, too. Like, it's okay.
But it was important to me that they knew that, you know, that there was something I read about, you know, at the time, I thought that being 17 and pregnant was the worst thing that was ever going to happen to me. I thought that was it, and my life was over. It was the worst thing that was ever going to happen. And then I read something a couple of years ago, and it's something that pops up around Easter, and it says that resurrection means that the worst thing isn't the last thing. I think that would have been really helpful for me to believe when I was 17 years old and pregnant. But anyway, I just went off track. But yeah, my kids had to know. They had to know.
So they found out when you met each other?
When I reached
Like,
out.
what was your process in looking for your mom?
Google.
Wow, Google, man, what a search engine.
I had like a tab saved, and like it was like the yellowpages.com or something, because I knew some details. I knew my grandmother's name, I knew her Cori's name, I knew her maiden name, and that was it. And I knew like the general area.
That's an awful lot when you have Google.
Well, yeah. So I looked, and
Well, Cori's not a very common female name, too,
exactly.
so that helps narrow it down a little bit.
And I found an address, and then I remember I would look and say oh, I wonder if it's different. And then one day it changed. And that's when you guys moved. So the fact that I saw that, and then we were driving around, and you're like, oh yeah, we used to live on that street. I was like, I remember that address from my Google search. Anyway, but I wrote a letter. You've seen my handwriting. It's terrible.
That's also genetic.
But I slowed down and actually wrote a letter. And I think I included my cell phone, my email address, my every possible way to get a hold of me. Just in case. You never know. Who knows? And then I think there was an email, and then we organized a phone call, and then we met for lunch one day. We had wine and a tuna niçoise salad and some coconut shrimp or something. And then I met the family, got snowed in, went to the wrong house, got greeted by your siblings, which was perfect.
Who are nuts. They are nuts.
The first thing you're like, oh, hey, you want some wine? Yeah.
Nice.
Thank you.
Did your siblings know about her?
Yeah.
Okay, so then it was just part of the family.
They knew she was coming.
Yeah.
You know,
oh, okay. Gotcha.
That day, yeah.
What made you, Kristin, want to find your mom?
How much time do we have? It was so...
Short version, 2 sentences.
Yeah.
Why would you want to? Some people don't want to. I had a friend, and he wanted nothing to do with.
Yeah.
He just said, my parents are my adopted parents, and that's it. Period. End of
I've always
story.
been naturally curious, and I think knowing that my parents couldn't conceive and that all 3 of us were adopted was different. My sister went and reached out to both of her parents, and that was a very different story, very different path. It would be very interesting to hear her talk about that. But seeing her go through that process, and me thinking, even if that happens to me, I'd rather know. Because it was okay for a little while. I think at first it was, but just personality differences led them to not really having a great relationship. But even if it's the worst case scenario, I was like, I don't want to find out that she's wanted to meet me for my entire life, and then she was in an awful car crash or something before I got to meet her. And even if the news is bad news, I'd rather know and not wonder forever.
When did you start looking? As soon as you turned 18?
I mean, I'd always been curious. I dug through my parents. Sorry, Mom. She knows this. She knows this now. But I've always been naturally curious. I dug through their filing cabinet, and I just saw a folder with my name on it, and I saw a bunch of the legal documents. I saw a bunch of nothing with identifying information, but just from the lawyer's office. So I could have called the lawyer's office at that point. It was probably my right at 18 to get more information. But it was like teenage years. I had a lot of emotional issues in teenage years, just like finding of self and feeling unsteady about like who I am and who I came from. And so I always felt a draw to discover what that was, because I am so much of my parents personality wise, and like there's certain things like Wendy to a T. Like I'll say something and my sister will go, okay, Wendy. As it'll just come out and I'll say things and I'm like, okay, Cori. And then I'll be on the phone with my mom and I was like, well, that was a dad comment. And I'll just like, I'm very much all three of you in a really cool, interesting, very emotional way. But there's still that tug. Very Elsa.
Oh my gosh.
Elsa always comes up.
Frozen reference.
No joke though, when the song Show Yourself,
Yeah.
I saw that for the first time in theaters, cried my eyes out. Because like the line, you are the one I've been waiting for all my life, like it's gets me. Every time, still. I'll be singing it in the car and start crying.
Honestly, it gets me. And I have birth parents that I grew up with. And so I'm like, wow, that's crazy just to think about that. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure it was quite a journey for both of you. And then to meet, how did you feel when you both met each other for the first time? What did that feel like?
Well, it felt very natural.
Yeah.
I
was super nervous at first. And then it just kind of like fell in.
Yeah.
I took her to walk around the music school, and my voice teacher looked at me because she adopted a child too, and so she's like, it was really interesting for her to talk to her, and she looked at me and she looked at her, she goes, oh my God, like she knew that like the whole story. I would go into my voice lesson and be like, I'm really stressed and this is why. Voice lessons are therapy, by the way. And it was just really surreal. She's like, I can't, people are speechless, and it's just really interesting, but no, everything fell in very naturally, and I think every time, like any time I go to visit the family, there's no expectations. I just coming home for a little bit. It's really wonderful.
Well, I think that part of the process for me was realizing that I was the adult, and I'm being a little bit funny, but not really. Like realizing that I was the adult, and not knowing how to behave that way.
Again, not something you can learn in a book.
Right.
What to do when you meet your daughter for the first time.
Being the mother of small children and being the mother of a 21-year-old are very, very different things.
Yeah.
And working on a college campus where the dynamics of that, like at that point I believe you were still like in that job that was very close to campus. So you run into college kids all the time, and how you interact with them is very different than how you interact at home.
Correct.
And you're not their mother.
It was surreal. A lot of this was surreal. But we did it. We're good.
Yeah.
I think we're managing.
Oh yeah. I have to share the late for school in the morning story because it's one of my favorites. But speaking of like how Rosalie didn't know that I was around, and because something was happening, I don't know, we were running late. Cori and I dropped her off at school one morning. We walked in, signed her in. The nice, sweet, well-meaning lady behind the desk goes, Rosalie, is this your aunt? She goes, no, it's my sister. And so she goes, oh, I didn't know you had a sister. And sweet, innocent little 8-year-old goes, yeah, neither did I. And then we're walking out to the car, and Cori's like, I'm going to be the talk of the next PTO meeting. Surprise! That's just how it is. We roll with the punches. It's
Well, I think that now, I think that I talk to you more as if you're one of my peers. Than I do, and again, maybe when your sisters are older, I'll talk to them the same way. But we still always call her the baby. In my parents' house, I'm going to visit the baby. The baby's getting married. I mean, it's a very
that is a very interesting word choice for that.
She's the baby. But I also, when I'm talking, for example, today when we were talking about the wedding. I am talking to you not as my daughter. I'm talking to you as the bride who needs to make decisions and might have to be pushed a little bit and might need to be steered or, whatever it has to be. And I think that the times that I'm harder on you, which I don't think I'm very hard on you. Maybe I am, I don't know. But if I'm ever abrupt with you, it's those moments. I'm talking to you as if you are my neighbor, my very close friend. And so switching gears is really interesting sometimes.
So especially too, because Cori's sister is 8 years older than me? No, 12.
Jody's
less than
she's
15 years
43.
older than me. Yeah, it's about 10 years older. And so basically thinking about like interacting with her, I feel like we interact more like peers as well, even though it's like aunt. But she would have been an aunt at 10 years old, 11 years old, so
she was.
It would have been more. Yes, she was, absolutely. She was. And then the dynamics of that would have been more peer. You know, because there's so many kids who they have a baby brother or sister at 11. So many.
Yeah.
Very normal. So that's a very interesting point to think about, though.
So my question, and again, stop me if it's too much, but why did you choose to give her up for adoption?
I think that I would like to defer that answer.
Okay.
Fair.
It's okay.
I am perfectly happy to talk about it sometime. I can't do it today. Can't.
That's fine.
Because then I'll sleep on your couch and I'll never make it home and I'll lose my job because I won't be,
Oh my
I just
gosh.
Can't. I can't.
Okay, so that's fine. So fun
it's
fact.
multi-layered.
Makes total sense. I totally
and no
understand.
matter what the answer is, too, like, it happened, it's over, we're together now, and so it's one of those things where it's, it's just not easy to talk about.
Exactly. It's not, I want to give you the answers that you want. I really, not that you want, the answers that you're asking for. I need time to process, and, I put things away for a very long time.
Yeah, you could.
Years and years of therapy.
You also didn't realize you didn't know if you would see her, so why go through that? You can put the Band-Aid on it and put that aside and not have to unpack it. You didn't need to. So,
but I know how difficult it is to. I'm going to give you little bits and pieces here and there until I'm able to,
all good.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. No problem. Also,
so you are loved and wanted.
No.
Honestly, I will tell you from my perspective, I admire you greatly for your decision, because I don't think I could have ever done that. There's just no way. So I have the utmost respect for you, and I'm so happy because of your decision, I get to have Kristin in my life.
Kristin, right.
So for me, just selfishly, it's amazing. It's a huge thing. So
it's one of those wild things where you think about like how different life would have been, and just the connections that you make and the people that you make with people that you make connections with, and how I wouldn't be in this house, I wouldn't have my fiance, I wouldn't have my friends, I wouldn't have so many different things, and it's just it's a huge blessing to see.
You are a blessing.
And it's a story. It's like what a story. What a gift that you have this story to tell in whatever way you are able to share it. And like you said, you kind of learn how to share that story with what's appropriate, what's not. And even for me as a divorced single woman, I do the same thing with my divorce. It's like some people don't need to know why I got divorced. And some people can know the whole story. And it's just, you don't need to share everything with every person.
And it's not a matter of hiding it.
No, not at all.
It's just a matter of figuring out, just putting the pieces together.
And it's a personal decision. It's something so deep in our hearts of why we decide to do what we do in our lives that the whole world doesn't need to know. They just don't.
Right. Well, and I think that, and I appreciate what you said. I do. I get a lot of, you're very brave and I admire you, and I get a lot of that, and it makes me uncomfortable. Because to say that you don't know how you would ever do that, or whatever it happens to. I'm saying I get this from a lot of people. I don't know that I could ever do that. It is remarkable what you can do and what you can get through when you have to. I mean, shocking. I know you two are well aware of this, but it is, it's not, these things happen. It's not something you can ever plan for. Nobody knows they're going to be in these situations.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And you just kind of put your head down and you get through it, and then
we did
hope for the best.
we did an episode on bravery too, because a lot of people tell me the same thing. For the divorce that I went to, it was an unwanted, unexpected divorce that I prayed really, really hard to reconcile for years.
Sorry.
And I get the same comments of, wow, you're so brave, you're so strong, you went through that, and it makes me uncomfortable too. Yeah. But I just have to tell you that, just so that you know.
I appreciate it, and I welcome it, and I don't,
No, I totally understand, but I hear it in a different element for what I've gone through in my life too, and it is uncomfortable, exactly like you said. When you're forced to do something, or you're put in a scenario that you're not expecting, you don't want, that you have to get yourself through, you don't have a choice, you make the decisions you need to make. And that's really what it comes down to, is you need to get through your life. Everybody does.
Right.
So everybody's making the best decisions they can at the time. But, like I said, selfishly, I'm just really glad that you chose to have Kristin, because there's alternate options in the world these days and everything. And so I'm like, oh, so glad that she's here. So then I get to hug her.
I'm glad you're here too.
She's like she's the captain of the hugging
Speaking
team.
of uncomfortable flattery. Let's all just feel uncomfortable together.
I'll just sit here and positively roast Kristin. Let's just tell her all all the amazing things about herself, so that she can feel uncomfortable for the rest of the day.
Oh, great. Just getting me prepped for my wedding when everyone's just throwing love at me all day, and I'm going to be like, so uncomfortable.
No, but you know what, though? It's fine, because you are going to be so cranked up on adrenaline.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you this again, on the day of your wedding, you're going to be nervous until you get to the end of the aisle, and then you'll see Cody. And you won't see anybody else, and you won't hear anything else.
Mm-hmm.
There are very few things that are going to, you'll just see him. Mm-hmm. And then the rest of the day, you just kind of float through it, because you have a fantastic wedding planner.
There she is.
I mean, what another perk to have, that you meet your birth mom and she just happens to be a wedding planner out of everywhere. It's like, wow, that's...
if I was like a zillionaire, but that's fine. Planner's fine too.
Oh my gosh.
I realized we forgot to mention the song. We ask our guests if there's, and you might have a whole album playlist on the top of your head right now. We ask our guests if there's a specific song that identifies with the topic that you're talking about, or the certain time of life that you're talking about, or a song that got you through something, or that brings you hope. So off the top of your head, you already
know what it is.
I mean,
you
probably.
Right? When I was pregnant with Kristin, and I was a kid, and I was, a mess, I listened to 10,000 Maniacs, Blind Man Zoo, over and over and over and over again. And I actually can't listen to it anymore, which is unfortunate, because it's a great album. Yeah. But it's a tough one, but it got me through that summer.
Any specific song on that album?
I can't remember the name of it, but I can sing it.
Go for it.
No, I'm not singing.
Do you sing too? Do you have musical abilities?
I sing beautifully in my car.
Okay, perfect.
And in the shower.
Yeah.
And sometimes when I am cooking.
So you're a rock star.
I sing like an angel.
That's great. I'm here for that. I love that.
Interestingly, too, she gifted that CD to me. Yes, CD.
Yes.
Could have been a record.
Right.
When,
Those are back though.
Right. And I listened to it, the whole thing, on repeat when I would leave visiting the family. That was my thing. Like, I would put it in when I left, and it was like, I would know how my timing...
that I broke you with that. Like, I don't know that was really appropriate of me to share that with you.
No, I loved that, though, because it helped me to kind of get into, okay, this is what she was filling her ear holes with that entire summer, and that came out in 1989, which is interesting.
The two fun things that I love about Kristin's birthday, and props to you for this one. First of all, is that your birthdays are a day apart. That's crazy to me. And second of all, that we just talked about this the other day. Like, she's an 80s baby for a month. Like, she barely was in the 80s, and so she's
still born in the 80s.
And we're like, wow, the 90s is a great decade because we were all born in the 90s, and she's like, yeah, I was born in the 80s. Yeah, for what? 31 days.
36.
Okay, sorry, my fault. It's like, so that's so funny to me. That's great. Also, I don't know if you know this either, but I thought her birthday was in March. And so when her birthday popped up on Facebook last year that it was November, I was like, this isn't her birthday. Who hacked her Facebook? Her birthday's in March. Don't ask me how I knew that. I was so convinced I would have died on the hill saying her birthday was in March. I have no idea. And then I was like, wow, I'm a terrible friend. I did nothing for you. I was so unprepared because Facebook just told me that her birthday was November. And I was like, no, it's not. I had months to plan this.
A video of her holding her phone in front of her face while she's like running around her house doing things. She goes, I'm so sorry. I'm so embarrassed.
I was so embarrassed. I'm like, how could this happen? Like, your birthday's in March. I have no idea why.
We can have a celebration day in March if you want us to.
Yeah, we could do that. It's not even a half birthday.
No, it's just it's going to be a fun day in March that we just...
Fall birthdays are the best, though. Mm-hmm. My birthday's in the fall, too. So.
Is it?
Mm-hmm. And then at the end of October, yeah.
So
Halloween weekend.
That's fun.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's fun at every age because as an October birthday, as a kid, you have Halloween parties and costume parties, and it's super fun. And then obviously Halloween parties as an adult are equally as fun. So it's really just a birthday.
In a different way.
Every age, it just never gets old. Halloween weekend, birthday.
Well, you know,
it's the
not
best.
so long ago, my birthday was very hard for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And at one point I realized, okay, my birthday is always Thanksgiving weekend. I can take a 4-day weekend for my birthday. How many people can do that? We can.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
And it's every year.
Yeah.
It's blocked out on the calendar. Oh, sure, I'm taking Black Friday off. Always.
Right.
And it's kind of wonderful because then I can have a great time for my birthday.
Taking advantage of that.
But then I can also sit with all of the things pertaining to my girl. To the baby.
To the baby. I'm sure that had to be really interesting too, and just the birthday differences and you knowing that too for a long time. And if your girls didn't know about her for a while, that was like a day that you had.
It was hard.
Like
it was hard.
Like
it
a
was
secret
terrible.
day almost. A private, not secret.
Right.
Private.
And then my parents would just sort of look at me with those knowing faces. How are you? I'm fine.
Yeah. Stop talking to me.
Fine.
Yeah.
Let me process.
Yeah. Well, we'll add. Did you say there was a song on the album? Do we remember?
We can look up the specific name. I feel like Eat for Two is the first.
That's the one.
Eat for Two.
I mean, it's not a very happy song though, so maybe that can't be the one.
Oh, it's
can
great.
be whatever
Our
you want it
playlist
to
is
be.
very eclectic.
It is the most off the wall randomness in the world.
Yeah,
But that's the song. That's the one that.
Perfect.
I'm gonna add it right now.
That works.
Yeah. It's kind of tragic and a little bit melodramatic.
Hey, aren't we
So
all?
unlike me. Jeez.
Yes. What a rocky road of life.
Oh, here it is.
Kind of just, put that in there. What a journey. But it's beautiful to see you two together and to know, and I've heard all about you from Kristin, and just she was really excited to talk to you. And so it's an honor. It really is to see you both, and it's a really cool story, and it's just fun to share with people. And I think people enjoy it, and I can't wait to see you both at the wedding. And I'll probably cry too, and I'll just turn around and be like,
it'll be a mess.
Man, there's that roasted garlic again.
That's going to be an absolute
Got some sunscreen
disaster.
in my eyes.
I cannot. There's just no way I'm going to be able to handle it either. It's just too much. But the love that I have for Kristin, even just all the family dynamics aside, I would be emotional that day. So.
Well, but you think about it, we'll all write a book together. We'll all write the etiquette book.
On how to have a blended family like yours.
Yep. We're going to write the book.
That's an interesting how-to book. I wonder how many people would buy the how-to version.
Everybody.
The story version for sure.
It'll be the story version.
Right.
We'll bill it as an etiquette book.
Perfect.
That's
How
funny.
smart I am.
Yeah. It's great.
You feel okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We're breathing.
You're good.
We're gonna get back to the rest of our wedding planning marathon.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. We'll talk to you guys later.
Love ya. Love ya.